In this piano tutorial, we'll be learning a couple of different ways of playing the same progression, right? And the progression that I want to focus on is the progression 3, 6, 2, 5, right? In this case, we're going to be in the key of G major. So the progression would be 3, which is B minor, 6, which is E minor, 2, which is A minor, and 5, which is D major. And this progression actually comes from the song Week by Sunday Service Choir, which was actually requested a couple of months ago in one of the videos, okay? So what I basically want to do is start off the progression as basic as possible and then move on, add different extensions, add different passing chords, and hopefully you're able to learn something different or a little bit of theory behind the chords that I'll be playing, okay? So like I said, we're in the key of G major. So we're playing B minor, E minor, A minor, and D major. So once right here, all I did was play the basic triads for that progression, right? I did not add any extensions. I didn't use any passing chords in between the chords. All I'm doing is playing the basic diatonic triads, right? B minor, I'm using a couple of inversions, but those are simple as well, right? E minor, A minor, and D major. But there's a couple of steps that we can take to make this progression sound a little bit fuller. And one of those is adding sevenths, right? In this case, for the minor chords, we can add a minor seventh, right? So let's say for B minor, we can play it as a B minor seventh. And a quick tip for making these minor seventh chords, all I do, the way that I'm thinking about it is not specifically focused on the minor seventh, right? The minor seventh in this case is A. What I actually do is think, if I want the minor seventh chord for B, I go up 3 half steps, and the note in this case is D. So I play a D major as my right hand, right? So I combine a D major with the bass in B. So B with a D major, in this case first inversion or second inversion, right? So that's how we get B minor seventh. We do the same thing for E minor seventh, right? Instead of playing E minor, we play a E, go up 3 half steps. We have a G, so we play a G major, right? So we get so weak in the knees, da 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 da. Same thing for A minor, play A minor seventh, da 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 da. Now for the 5 chord, which is D major, we're not going to play a major seventh, right? If we play a major seventh, you're going to notice that the major seventh in this case is C sharp, which actually isn't part of the G major scale, right? That C sharp isn't in G major. So another option that we could possibly think of would be D dominant seventh, right? But in this case, this chord does not work because this chord is very strong with like the tension and release. Usually when we play a dominant seventh chord, it wants to lead to the 4th of the chord, right? So it wants to lead to the 4th of D, which is G major, right? Usually when we play this chord, the next chord ends up being this one, right? But in this case, this progression goes from D back to the 3, which is B minor seventh in this case, right? So we're not going to play a D dominant seventh either. So one of the options that we have is playing a sus chord on top of this 5, right? And the way that I voice it is like this, right? A D9 sus 4. And this chord is basically a combination of 2 chords again. All I'm doing is playing D in my bass or my left hand, and I go down 2 half steps, right? 1, 2, and I have a C, so I play a C major. And that gives me that D9 sus4 chord or C over D/ chord, right? I like adding the 5th over here. Sometimes I double up on the G right here to fill it up slightly more. But we can use this chord as a substitution for a regular D major, okay? So now it sounds like this. We get so weak. Da 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 da. Right? It's sounding a little bit more fuller. Alright, so now we can play around with what are the passing chords that we can use within this song, right? And most of them actually come from the actual song, so maybe you're familiar with them, okay? So we can start off on the 2 regularly, right? We get so weak. Sorry, on the 3, we get so weak. Da 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 da. Now from here, we can play around with basically secondary dominants, right? Instead of going directly from the 5 to the 3, we can play a passing chord in between these two. So from the 5, we're actually going to go to the 5th of the 3. So the 5th of the 3 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, F sharp. So we're going to play an F sharp dominant with a couple of alterations, right? And it sounds something like this. Da 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 da. You see, so I played this F sharp chord, right? And it's an F sharp dominant, sharp 9, sharp 5. And if we analyze this chord right here, it looks very weird, right? F sharp, E, B flat, D, F sharp again, and A, right? But let's say we move around some of the notes in this chord, right? Let's move this B flat down an octave. You can notice that the left hand is basically playing an F sharp dominant chord. Now the right hand, all it's doing is playing a D major triad, and that gives us this F sharp 7, sharp 9, sharp 5 chord, right? But the reason why I play this B flat up here is so that it doesn't sound too muddy down here, right? But that's basically all I'm doing. I'm playing an F sharp dominant under a D major triad, right? I combine them both and I get this chord. And this is basically known as an upper chord structure, I think, or upper triad structure, something like that. It's basically when we combine a triad with a dominant chord to create sort of an alteration to that dominant chord, right? So this is the passing chord that we will use before the 3, right? And you can sort of feel that tension to release, right? Right, so all together, we get so da 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 da. Right, so let's explore that concept a little bit more. Right, we have this F sharp 7 altered, but also there's something known as tritone substitution that we can use, right? It's basically a substitution that we use for dominant chords, right? So in this case, this is the dominant chord that we're using, F sharp. So we can substitute it for its tritone. In this case, the tritone basically means it's 3 whole steps away from F sharp. So F sharp, we count 1, 2, and 3. So the tritone in this case is C. So basically, we can substitute the F sharp 7 for C7. And of course, we can add all of those alterations as well, right? And let's use that same upper chord structure where we use the D major triad to create those alterations. So instead of playing this F sharp 7 or voiced it like this, we can play a C7 under this D major triad, okay? So we get this passing chord that we will substitute for this one, okay? So it sounds something like this. Da 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 da. Right there we have two different options already. We have this one to the 3, or we can go from this one down to the 3, okay? Now let's get back, let's bring it back a little bit and sort of explore other options for extensions, right? We don't have to necessarily stay with the minor 7th. We can go to a minor 9th or even a minor 11th in this case, right? So let's say we're playing the 3. How would we make this into a minor 9th? The 9th in this case is basically one whole step away from the 8th. The 8th or the 1st is B. So all we have to do is add, let's say we have B over here, we add 1, 2, a C sharp to the chord. That's how we get a B minor 9. But we have to be careful with these extensions because we don't want to stray away from the actual melody of the song, right? This might sound a little bit dissonant if we play it, right? We get so weak in the knees, we can hardly speak, right? But in this case, for E minor, it tends to work out a little bit better. Or we can even play it like this so that the 9th isn't too high up in the chord and doesn't stand out too strongly. So we get so weak in the knee, da 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 da. In this case, for the 2, we can play a minor 11th chord. And all I'm doing here basically to make it a minor 11th, right? This is the minor 7th. All I did was add, in this case, the 9th, which is B, and the 11th, which is D, right? And if we want to get into a little bit of theory, remember how I said that A minor 7th is basically a C major over an A, right? All I'm doing here really is thinking about C major, and I basically added a 7th, a major 7th, right? The major 7th for C is a B, right? And I added it down here. And if we wanted to add the 2nd or the 9th, it's a D, right? So I'm basically playing a C major add 2 plus the 7th over an A, and that gives us that A minor 9th 11th or A minor 11th, okay? So we get so da 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 da. Now there's another substitution that we can include as well, right? We were playing, remember how for the 5 we did a D9 sus4, but this 9 sus4 extension can actually be applied to the other chords as well. And it works out because technically 9 sus4 isn't either a major or a minor chord, right? It's not the suspended chords aren't major or minor, and they tend to work out both as substitutions for major and minor chords, right? So in this case, we get so weak 3. Then for the 6, we can play an E9 sus4, right? And it's just a D major over the E, right? So we get so da 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 da. We can do the same thing for the 2, right? Play a sus chord, and then we're on the 5, as a sus chord, and then we go into the passing chord, and we're back to the 3. Da 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 right? And this is another voicing that we can use for the A minor 9th as well. I forgot to mention it with the minor 11th. It's a little bit more spread out, but all I'm doing is playing C and D with my thumb, and then I play a G major up here. And I include the left hand, which is A, E, and G, okay? Alright, so let's add a little bit more passing chords, right? So in between the 6 and the 2, we can add some commonly played passing chords. For example, we can play this diminished chord right before the 2. And the way I come up with this passing chord is by basically going down a half step and simply playing a diminished chord from this chord. So I just go up 3 half steps. So 3, 3, 3, 3 half steps, 3 half steps, and that can basically span throughout the whole piano. But I try to spread it out a bit so that it fills out a little bit better in the register, like this, and then we land on the 2. And the reason why that works out is because technically this chord right here stems from an E7, right? It's an E7 flat 9 basically. And that E7 wants to resolve to the A, which in this case is the 2. So we get so da 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 da. We can do the same thing from the 3 to the 6, right? And do the same thing again to reach the 2. Another substitution or passing chord that we can use is a little bit simpler, and it's just going from the 6 to the 1 and then the 2, right? So I'm basically using this 1 as a passing chord in between the 6 and the 2. And the reason why we can use it as a passing chord is because the 1 can most likely be substituted for the 6 because the 6 and the 1 have 2 notes in common. So it won't create that much of a difference, right? So it would sound something like this. We get so we get da 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 da, right? 6, 1. In this case, the 1 includes a bunch of extensions as well. So G major 9th, and then the 2. Alright, so let's actually learn one last set of passing chords or substitutions, right? And in this case, this one actually comes from the song. And what it does is actually try to focus on the melody, right? So it's in the beginning portion of the chorus. So the part that goes da 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 da, sorry, da 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 da, right? We get so weak. So it includes chords in combination with this melody, right? And it actually sounds like this. We get so weak, right? And then it lands on that 3. So da, 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 dun, 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 da, 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 da. Da 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 da. Right, so where does that come from, right? So it starts basically on the 5, on that D9 sus4 that we did before, but in this case it's focusing on that melody. So we get, so we get. Now this chord right here, it's more focused on the melody, right? And the reason why we're playing this chord, it's sort of making a trip down the circle of fourths to reach that first chord in this progression, which is a 3, right? So we started off here. We get, this chord right here is a C sharp minor 11th, right? The reason why the extensions exist is because it's trying to include the melody. Let's say we just played it as a C minor, it wouldn't sound the same as when we include this extension right here, which is part of the melody. Now this chord is going to go to the 4th of itself, right? So the 4th of C sharp, which is F sharp, right? So we went from C sharp to F sharp 7th. Again, still maintaining the melody over here in E. And then from F sharp, we're going to the next 4th, which ends up being the 3, which is B minor 7th, okay? So da 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 da, right? And technically, we can actually go through the whole circle of fourths, right? Let's say we started off slightly before. So let's say instead of starting on D minor, we started on the chord that is a 4th away from C sharp, right? So C sharp is the 4th of A flat. So let's say we started here, something like this, right? I'm not going to try to maintain that melody too much because it doesn't tend to work out with this A flat, right? So let's see how it sounds. It would be something like, we get, so we get so weak, so we get so weak. So you can see how if we keep bringing it back through that cycle of fourths or fifths, we can basically create an infinite amount of passing chords, right? Let's say we started on the 5th of A flat, which is E flat. It would be something like, we get so weak in the knees, right? Da 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 da. But it doesn't mesh well because of the melody, right? And the melody is key in most of the songs, right? So we get so weak, da 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 da. But I invite you to explore all of those concepts with the circle of fourths or the cycle of fourths, to get better with what are the passing chords in most of these gospel or jazz songs, okay? Right, so that's basically the lesson for today. Hopefully you were able to learn something from this lesson and try to apply to other songs as well that might have similar progressions. For example, let's say you were going from the 3 to a 6, which is a common progression. That 3 to the 6 is included in the same progression. So let's say you were going from the 3 to the 6, you can still apply the same concepts. For example, this passing chord to land on the 6, right? In other songs, that's the best way of learning how to apply or memorize these concepts, is by practicing in different songs that you already know.